Welcome to Ask IITians. How are you all? I hope you all are good. You all are doing very well. So, students, today we are going to start our new chapter that is the soil. That what's the importance of the soil is, and we are going to see very different things or very different topics related to the soil in this chapter. Okay, so it's just that before starting the chapter, I would just like to introduce myself. So, my name is Arushi Sharma, and I'm going to teach you this chapter. And you can see that the chapter is all about soil, that how the soil is like soil is useful for us, and how we are growing the crops over it, and what are the you can say that what are the disadvantages we are going to face if the soil is not there. So, we are going to see all such points in this chapter. Fine. So now we are going to start it. So these are the topic students which we are going to cover up in today's class. So it's all about introduction, then importance of soil, soil teeming with life, soil profile, layers of soil, that how many layers are present in it, humus, weathering, and it's like soil erosion. So we are going to see all such type all these topics in this session. Okay, students, now you'll say, ma'am, what are this clay, loam, and sand? So don't get worried about all these things. You are going to study the types of soil. So these are the students' types of soil. Okay, and we'll see that how they are different from each other, what are the functions of each and every type of soil. Okay, so don't get worried about it. It's just that we are starting with the new chapter, and first of all, like we are going to start with soil. So it is very important for us to understand that what's the exact importance of soil is for us or for animals and for the plants as well. Okay. So yes, students, like starting with the introduction. So if we see soil, like what's the soil is? So students, what happened? Like it forms the upper surface of our earth, where you can see that people, not only people, but animals and the plants, or you can say all of the living beings survive. That means you can say it is a base for all, not only for the agriculture purpose, but also for the living beings also. So you can see here it forms the upper surface of the earth where life thrives and is the base of all agriculture. That whatever the agriculture process, like students, even though we are having plants, trees, from there we are getting fruits and vegetables, but when we have to grow such crops, pulses, cereals, and everything for our food. So what we have to do is we have to grow them on a large scale, and that we called as the agriculture. And for agriculture student, the very important thing is that we required some soil. Okay, and that soil is must be fertile in nature. If it is not fertile in nature, then how you are going to crop? Exactly. So that's how student you can say that the soil is forming the upper surface of the earth, and it is a kind of the base for all of us, because we all are directly depending on it. I am not saying indirectly. We are directly dependent on it. Exactly, because we are growing crops there and we are getting food from there. Agriculture process has been done. So if we are not doing agriculture, if we are not having soil, so how we are going to survive without food? Exactly, because we can't prepare everything in laboratories. We can't do everything artificially. We need some things as natural also. Even though we grow crops, but it is also a kind of process that which is done naturally as well. So that's why student we can see that the soil is a base for all of us, because we are getting food from it, because we do agriculture on soil only, and because of that we are getting food. Now, due to the physical and chemical weathering of rocks, weathering means you can say like breakdown of the rocks. It comprises of minerals, gravel, microbes, insects, decaying organic matter that we called as humus, nutrients, water, and air. That means the big sides of the rocks, when they get break down into small pieces, that we called as the weathering. And on the weathering of the rock students, we are having what? Soil. And that soil comprises of so many things, like minerals are there, because minerals are very important for growing, like for the growth of the plants, for the growing of the crops. Microbes is helping the plant, like it directly or indirectly, you can say that microbes helps in the agriculture process as well. Insects, and then we are having decaying organic matter, that you can say that that is the decaying organic matter. Either you can say like any animal died and it just get buried under the soil, or it's just that you can say that the organic waste which we are depositing in the soil, that is the humus. It contains nutrients, water and air, everything. Like it comprises of all such things which is important for us and which is also important for the agriculture. And agriculture you can do only when you are having the soil, and that soil which is fertile in nature. So that is the very important thing, student, that soil forms the upper surface of the earth, and it's like it a base for all of us, for all of the living beings. Because if soil is not there, plants also can't grow because they require soil for the growth. Okay, now I'm going to show you one video here, and I hope you will like that video. So here it is.
Soil is one of the most important natural resources. It forms the uppermost layer of the Earth's crust. It is a mixture of rocks, minerals, dead and decaying plants, and animals. It supports the growth of plants by holding the root firmly and supplying water and nutrients.
So students, have you watched this scene? Like this person is telling you that soil is a kind of the resource which is required by each and every living organism, and the soil is a kind of the natural process. Not natural process, but a natural resource. Exactly, because we are getting directly from the nature. We are not making any kind of the soil. Exactly. So that's why student, soil is a kind of the natural resource, and which is comprises of the minerals, nutrients, stones, rocks, and everything. And it's just that we are having many uses of soil, like the importance of the soil, you can say that it is helping for the plants, for the transportation of the water, and more you can see in the video.
Soil is essential for agriculture and shelter for all. Soil is thus an inseparable part of our life. Let us do an activity. Collect some samples of soil from different places such as a garden, roadside, and construction site. Examine these samples under a magnifying glass. You will learn that the garden soil contains grass, ants, etc. Roadside soil contains concrete, insects, etc. And soil from the construction site contains sand, concrete, and cement. Composition of soil. About 1/5 of the area of the Earth's surface is covered with soil. The components of soil are water 25%, air 25%, mineral particles 45%, and organic matter like humus, roots, and organisms 5%.
So student, this is the composition of the soil. That means that whatever the components present in the soil, that how much part of the air is present in soil, how much part of water is present in soil. So it's like they have given you the separation of all these things. Okay, because student, water is very important. If you are not giving water for the plant, so that there is the transportation of the water from the soil to the plant for their growth, so you will see that the plant will not grow usually. If I say that if you are having any plant pot in your house, and if you are not giving it water for 3 to 4 days, so what you will observe that the plant is going to be die, because it is not getting water. Because water, as people, or you can say the animals, require the water, similarly plants also require water for their survival. Because without water, student, that they can't survive. That is how the soil contains water, as well as it requires air also. Because as we know this thing, that for our for our respiration process we require air. Similarly, student, plants also require air. Then minerals are present there for the growth of the plant, as well as you can see for the growth of the agriculture process also. And even though there are the other elements like the organism, or you can say organic matter, which we call as humus, so all such things making the complete soil. And these are the components of the soil which are having their particular amount. You can see here like 25% is air and 25% is water. So that's how, student, they are having their composition in the soil, and they all are mixed up together, and then they form the soil. Okay.
A vertical section through different layers of the soil is called the soil profile.
Okay, so students, we'll see the soil profile topic as well. But before that, we have to see more things, because till now, what we have discussed about is just that the soil comprises of so many components, and all of these components are having their particular section in the soil, and all of these components are helpful. Why? Because we need soil for the agriculture process, and for agriculture process, student, it's like that plants need to grow, or you can say that the crop needs to grow properly, and it will require air, water, minerals, and organic matter as well. And these all are the components of the soil. That is why, student, we can say that the soil is a base for all of us, not only for like you can say for agriculture process. It's like on agriculture process, we all of us depend on it. That is why soil is a very important thing, and soil comprises of so many things, students, so that we are getting food from it. Okay, now it is the introduction part of this chapter, that what's the soil and what are the components are present in the soil. Now we are going to see that what are the importance of the soil, like why the soil is important for us. So very first point, student, that we have already noticed that for the agriculture purpose, if we are doing agriculture, so what happened, that we are yielding crops. Agriculture is what, student? It is the process for yielding crops. And in the crop, students, you can see any of the vegetable, any of the fruit, cereal, pulses, wheat, grains, or you can say rice. So we are getting each and everything from the agriculture process only. Fine. And for the agriculture process, student, what we require soil. So that's the very important point of the soil. And now you can see here that it supports plant growth by holding the roots firmly and supplying water and nutrients to the plant. Because, student, as we have seen that the soil contains water, air, minerals, so many nutrients are present in it, and these all things are transferred from the soil to the plant, so that plant can grow easily. And students, you can see when plant is growing properly, when the growth of the plant is very well, so directly or indirectly, you can see when we are doing agriculture process also, so what we require, that the yielding of the crop must be good, and the type of the crop, or you can say that the quality of crop must be good, and all these things we are getting only from the soil, because soil contains air, water, nutrients, and all of these components, so that this all these components transfer from the soil to the plant, and that's how you can see that the growth of the plant will be good. Okay, so that's the important point for the soil, students. Now the another one, we can say it is second, and it is third, that it acts as a natural habitat for many organisms like earthworm, fungi, bacteria, ants, etc. That means, student, are like small microorganisms like which can't live in our houses, or it's just that maybe they can, but for a very small organism which are like, so it provide a kind of shelter for them. It is a kind of home for them. Like for earthworm, generally we find it out earthworm in the soil only, so you can say that the soil is a kind of home for the earthworm. For many organisms, it is acting as a natural habitat, or you can say that it is acting as a natural shelter. Exactly. So you can see, student, that the soil is very important for the agriculture process, and for the agriculture process, what we require, student, that the yielding of the crop must be good, and it will only be possible when soil is comprising of all of the components, that is air, water, nutrients, minerals, everything. And even those, student, all such things are very important for the growth of the plant as well, because the soil, what the soil will do, it will hold its root very properly, and so that what will happen, that the supply of all the water and the nutrients from the soil is getting transferred to the plant, and plant is getting what, you can say that the plant is getting more strength, so that it can grow properly. Okay. And third point, what we have seen here, student, that it provides a kind of shelter, a kind of house, or you can say as a natural house for the organisms like earthworm, fungi, bacteria, ants, and many other organisms also which lives in the soil. Okay, so that's the important point about it. So these all are the importance of the soil, students. And even though, student, what happened, like the soil is there, so beneath the soil we are having underground water, that is the underground water. So it is also that, student, it holds that water, and that water is also used up by us only for various purposes. So we can see here, student, that we require soil, and the soil is very useful for us. And how? It just that we require soil for the agriculture, and agriculture is an important part of our life. If we are not doing agriculture, so that means we are not getting food from it. Okay, so that's how these are the importance of the soil. And it's just that it helps in the growth of the plant, it helps for the organisms because they do not find any home for them. So that's how they live in the soil, and it is acting as a home for them. Okay, so these all are the importance of the soil. Now, the very next topic is soil teeming with life. Like how it is teeming with life. So it's a statement, student, that soil is teemed with life. If I say how, so the statement states that the soil contains different type of living organisms that help in sustaining life. Because, student, what happened that, as I've told you, that the soil act as a natural shelter, natural home for many microorganisms like earthworm, fungi, bacteria. So, students, all these microorganisms are very important for us. Why they are important for us, students? Because they do some process with the soil so that the growth of the crop is very good. And if we are getting the very quality of crops, and you can see, student, that it is sustaining our life. So that's how, student, soil is teemed with life is a correct statement. Because if soil is not there, we are not able to do the agriculture process and we can't sustain our life. So that's how, student, soil teamed with life is a you can say is a correct statement. But for that, I want to show you one video, and here it is. So just look at it carefully.
Hey guys, hope you're having a pleasant day. Well, I'm Meldon and I'm an intern at class 7th. So let's get right to it. It is formed due to the weathering of which end up being soil layer, which is the most fertile layer modernly by trees. So yes, there are indeed several organisms growing in the soil. Well, these organisms help in decaying several manures or several plants and form a very fertile layer called a humus. We often refer earthworm as friends of farmers. They indeed help the farmers in decaying the plants and forming humus.
So, students, have you heard that what he's telling to you, that the you can see that the living organism which is present, or you can say living in the soil, for example, earthworm. Earthworm is there, students. So it is a microorganism, and it is like that. Earthworm is a kind of, you can say, friend of farmers. Why it is a friend of farmers, student? Like, if you can say manure, that means that wastage part of human beings, or you can say that the manure which we are getting from the houses or from the animals, if you are depositing that manure in your field, or that is, you can say, that some or decaying organic matter into the soil. So this earthworm, what it will do, it will decay the that organism into the soil. And because of that, student, what happened, that the upper layer of the soil will become more fertile in nature. And if it is becoming more fertile in nature, so what will happen, student, that it will help us for growing the crops very easily. That is why, student, you can say that the soil is teemed with the life. Because, student, soil contains different type of living organisms which is sustaining our life by like it is making the soil fertile. And as we can see here, that earthworm, fungi, bacteria, all these are present in the soil. And what they are doing, they are decaying the micro you can say they decaying the organic matter, so that the soil is becoming very fertile in nature, and it would be helpful for us for the agriculture process. And that's how it is sustaining the life. Fine, students. Now we are having the another topic, that is the soil profile. So now, students, what is the soil profile? So as we can see here, student, that we are having different layers. Okay, so when we are having the soil into the form of the distinct layer or into the different layer, or you can say when we divide the soil into the distinct layer, then we call it as the soil profile. As you can see here, student, this is one section, this is another section, third section, and the fourth section. And you can see that there is some difference in all of these sections, that you can see that it is very dark in color. If I talk about the color like what's the difference, and the another one is somewhat light, and then it is very light, it is like very light in color, and after that you are just getting rocks only. That when you go very deep into the soil, you will be getting the rock at the very end of the you can say very near to the ground. So that's how, student, you can see that the soil is divided into the very distinctive layer, and when we divide that soil into the distinct layer, then we call it as the soil profile. Okay, so you can see here that distinct layer of soil, and these distinct layer of soil depends upon the type of humus you can say. That humus is what, student? That the dead and decaying matter which is present in the soil, which make the soil fertile. So you can say type of humus, or you can say that the amount of the humus which is present. Okay, so that means what we can say, maybe the upper layer is having more amount of humus and the lower layer will having the less amount of humus. So on the basis of that, we have divided the layer of the soil into very distinctive form, and that's how we are calling it as the soil profile. Now you can see here, student, that this soil profile is divided into four parts, and we have given the name to these all you can say to these all layer. So this very first layer is called as the O horizon. Why? Because we have separate them as horizontally, that is why we are calling it as O horizon. Then it is the A horizon, then it is the B horizon, and it is the C horizon. And you can say that if it is the C horizon and it is having only rocks and rocks, that is why we call it as the bedrock. That means you could not find out the soil at this point. It's just that big size of rocks are present at this point, which cannot be weathered. That means which cannot be broken down into the soil. So these all are these. You can see that these are the four section of the soil, or you can say that the four distinct layer of the soil which we have formed depending upon the amount of the humus, depending upon the amount of nutrients, or the other you can say the other factors also. So we are getting these four part. That is the O horizon, that is the organic layer. A horizon, that we are calling it as the topsoil. Then the B horizon, we are calling it as subsoil. Then we are having C horizon, that is the bedrock only, because they are having a lot, you can say big size of rock in it, which cannot be weathered easily, so that it can be converted into the soil. So this is the soil profile, students. Now, if we see that what's the function of each and every layer, that is the layers of soil, bedrock, A, B, C, horizon. Okay, so you can see here, student, that this is the surface layer. That is the organic debris are present, or that we are calling it as the O horizon. Okay, that is the O horizon, which contains the organic matter, and it is, you can see here, student, that it is fertile in nature. That is why you can grow crop at this point. That means at this layer, crops are getting that you can see that the crops are getting what I can say, getting good growth. Okay, so that is the O horizon. Now, when we come to the topsoil, this is the surface layer. Now we are getting to the topsoil, that is the A horizon. So A horizon, student, mineral particles mixed with the organic material. That the mineral particles are present in it, and they just get mixed with the organic material. And even though students, what happened, that the topsoil is, you can say that it is visible to us, and it is also having the good amount of humus in it. Good amount of humus. If it is having the good amount of humus, students, so you can see that the roots of the crop is getting here. You can see that these are the roots of the crops has been grown up to this point. And students, if you have observed that for the growth of the plant, or for the growth of the crops, what we require good amount of humus. That means good amount of minerals and nutrients. And students, what happened when the roots are growing it to till that point, so they are getting the good amount of humus from that, and that humus is you can say that the water, air, and the nutrients, minerals getting transferred from the roots of the crop to the you can say to the plant. So that not exactly plants, but you can see that transferring from here to here, so that they can grow very well and they can yield good quality of crop, because it contains good amount of humus. And even those students, that if it is having a good amount of humus, so it is also having one important point, that it is rich in nutrients. Rich in nutrients. Fine. So one, it is having a good amount of humus. and second, it is rich in nutrients, because in this layer of the soil, student, what happened that the mineral particles mixed with the organic material, and when it is mixing with it, so they are forming a good amount of the humus, good amount of the nutrients. And when this layer is having a good amount of humus and nutrients, the soil, you can say that the roots are absorbing all of these nutrients and humus from the soil, and it is transferring all such components to the crop so that they can have a good growth and they can yield more and more quality of crops, good quality of crops. Fine. And even those students, like in this area, like in this part, you can say it is also a home, or it is a layer where the organisms are present, microorganisms. You can find it out, microorganisms in this layer. Okay, that is the top layer, you can say topsoil. That is how we are having first surface layer, in which organic debris are present, which get decomposed, that we are calling it as the O horizon. After the O horizon, we are having A horizon, because then we are dividing it horizontally. And in the A horizon, we call it as the topsoil. That means which is good for, you can say that it is the layer which is helping for the crops to grow very well, for the which is helping for the plants to grow very well. So that is the topsoil, because in that layer, what happened that the mineral particles mixed up with the nutrients or with the organic material, that is why they are generating good amount of humus, and it is also rich in nutrients. And you can see that it is a layer where the microorganisms are also present, and when all such things are present in one of the layer, so that layer is providing fertility to the soil. And when it is providing the fertility to the soil, so directly, student, it is helping us in growing crops. Okay, that means growing a good quality of crops. So that is all about the topsoil. Now if we talk about its texture, so it is soft in nature. Okay, now after coming to the surface, like if we starting from the surface layer, coming to the topsoil, now coming to the subsoil. Now in the subsoil, students, what happened that you can see here that it is the B horizon, and in this compounds draining from above accumulate. That means the compounds are draining into it, which gets accumulate in this part. And in this, students, what you will find out that this layer is also having a good quality of minerals, like mineral amount is present over here, large amount of minerals are present. But what happened, as this layer is soft in nature, but it is also, it is having some kind of hard texture, because you can see here, student, that the small size of rock is present. A small size of rocks are present in this layer. In this layer, you can see no rock, there is no such rock. But when you come to the subsoil part, in this B horizon, you will be finding small size of rocks. That is why the material get accumulate in this layer, and we are having good quality of minerals and the in it also. But it's just that it is somewhat hard in nature, because small size of rock is present in this layer, and that we call as the subsoil. Fine. Now, when we move down from the subsoil, then we are having the sea horizon. And this sea horizon, student, we are having parent material, partly weathered rock. That means, student, see, first of all, what is weathering? Okay, so weathering is a process, student, in which what happened that the big size rock gets break down into the soil with the help of air, wind, or you can say with the natural phenomena, that the big size rock converts into the soil. And this big size rock from which the soil is getting formed, we call it as the parent rock. What we call it as, we call it as parent rock. That is why, student, in the sea horizon, which we called as the parent material, in this we get partly weathered rock. That means they either they are having the very big size of the rocks, or they are having very small size of the rocks, because that rocks are converting into the soil. Okay, so that is the layer, students. And you can see that they are partly weathered. That means you can say that maybe they are having very big size of rock, as well as they can having the very small size of rocks. Okay, and you can see that they are having the and they are also having some kind of cracks in it. Okay, cracks, and again it is very hard in texture, because rocks are present over here. But now, after the parent material, that means after the rock, student, that is are partly in nature, partly weathered in nature, then we are having bedrock, that we call as the R horizon. Now, what is bedrock, student? At this point, you will be getting a layer of the rock only. That's a very large, you can say very large piece of rock, large piece of rock. And this large piece of rock, students, you are getting partly weathered rock. And from these partly weathered rock, student, you are getting a layer of the soil that is called as the subsoil, in which you will be seeing, like you can see, small rocks, small pieces of rock. But from that subsoil, you are getting the topsoil, in which there is no such rocks. It's just that it is only having the mineral humus, and it is also having a very soft texture because it contains component of the soil like air, water, humus, nutrients, minerals, microorganisms, everything. Fine. So that's how, student, this horizontal structure or this horizontal distinct layer of the soil makes the soil profile. And from the soil profile, what we have seen, that initially we are having the bedrock. Okay, we are starting from the downward side from now. So that means like it is the bedrock, which is having a very large piece of rock. Now with the help of the wind, air, or the natural phenomena, these bedrocks get break down into the small size of rock, or you can say partly weathered rock, which is not having any soil, any nutrient, any mineral in this part. Okay, so that the crops can grow over it. So we call it as the parent material, and this is called as the sea horizon. Now then we are getting subsoil. That means these rocks has been break down very easily, like into the very small kind of particles, that we are calling it as the subsoil. Okay, but it is also hard in texture because it contains small size of rocks. Now from that, student, we are getting topsoil. That means in that we are not having any rocks, because all of these rocks has been converted, or you can say has been weathered properly into the soil. And in that we are getting the good amount of humus as well as the good amount of nutrients and minerals, so that it is providing all of these components which is essential for growing crops, from it transferring from the roots to the crop, and they are growing very well. That is why we call it as the topsoil. Now from the topsoil, student, above that we are having one surface layer which is having organic debris, which are partly decomposed, that we called as the O horizon. So that's how, student, we have seen that the soil has been divided into the distinctive layer, that is the horizontal layer. And these layers, when you can see that in the we can see one profile, so that's why we call it as the soil profile. And then we have discussed that all these layers are having their different amount of humus, different amount of minerals, and that is why we can see that the top layer of the soil is good for the fertility, or good for the growing crops, because it contains all of the component which is required for the growth of the crops, for yielding the good quality of crops, that is the good amount of humus as well as the good amount of nutrients, everything, you can say air, water, everything. Okay, so this is the layer of the soil, or you can say that the soil profile. Fine. Now we are having this topic, that is the humus. So what is the humus, students? So humus are the organic matter present in the soil and are composed of dead and decaying parts of plants. That means you can say, student, that the soil is containing the organic matter which is present into it. Okay, and how it is present? So what is the humus, students? So humus that we are getting from the organic matter which is present in the soil, and it composed of the dead and decaying part of plant, animals, and living organisms. So that is the soil. Now soil contains two type of thing, that is the tiny pieces of rocks, and it contains humus. And humus is the organic matter which we are getting from the dead and decaying of the plants and animals. Now what happens, student, that if this is the soil, okay, this is the soil. Just imagine this is soil. You can say, ma'am, it is looking like a water because you are forming it in some wavy structure. But imagine it is a soil, and these soil are having microorganisms. These are the microorganisms. Okay, microorganisms, or you can consider it as the earthworm. And I have told you one thing, that the earthworm is what? Earthworm, like they are the friends of the farmer. Why, students? Because what happened when you are depositing the organic matter? Organic matter, either we can say that the dead or decaying part of plant, animals, living organisms into this soil. Now what happens, student, that these microorganisms work as the decomposers. That means they decompose this organic matter into the soil, and when that organic matter decomposed into the soil, so it get mixed up with the soil, and it results what? that it results in the increase of the fertility of soil. That is why, student, these decomposers or these organisms are very important for us. Why? Because they are helping us to converting the organic matter which is dead and decaying nature, because it is not any use for us, but they are converting it in use. Why? Because it is increasing the fertility of the soil, and when that the fertility of the soil increases, students, so indirectly it helps us in growing a good quality of crops, or we are getting more yielding of crop. Okay, so that's how, student, when it does like this decomposer does their reaction, you can say function, or their we can say their duty. So that's how they decompose that organic matter, and which result into the fertility of soil. And that organic matter we called as the humus. And that's why, student, we get this humus in the topsoil layer, that is in the horizon A. That is why, student, when we are having a more amount of humus in the topsoil, this topsoil is used for the growing crops. Okay, so that's the whole point about the humus, that the humus are the organic matter which is present in the soil, and it is composed of the dead and decaying part of the plants and animals. Fine, students. Now, weathering. That what's the weathering process is? It is a process by which rocks on the land surface, because, student, we are having like land, okay, and in the land you can't imagine that how much big size of rock can be present. So that big size of rocks on the land surface break down or crumble because of the action of elements of weather such as rain, frost, and temperature changes. Because of these elements of the weather, what happens, student, that the big size of rocks which we are having on our land surface, they get breakdown or crumble, and that's how, by weathering it, or by like converting into these small pieces, we get soil. And when those large size of rock gets converted into the soil, so that large size rock we called as the parent rock. Okay, that's why, student, if you have noticed in the soil profile, so at one point we are having bedrock where just you can find out only rocks and rocks. Then we are having partly weathered rock which are very, like you can say, small size of rock. And above that we are having soil part also, but it contains very small part of. Then we are having topsoil in which you will not find out such rocks, like small pieces of rocks as well. So that's how the weathering is a is a process in which a large piece of the rocks which is present on the land surface break down or crumble, so that we are getting soil from it. And it is just because of the action of elements of weather such as rain, frost, and the temperature changes. Fine. But as I have one video for that, so I can show you weathering process here.
Rocks and minerals. The Earth's crust is made up of different types of rocks. A rock is a natural deposit that forms the solid part of the Earth's crust. They can be as hard as granite or marble, and can be as soft as particles of sand, clay, or gravel.
So, students, the whole earth surface is having the rocks only, and it's just that we are having different type of rocks. Either we are having very soft type of rock as well, or either we are having very hard type of rock as well. Okay, so it's just that we are having every type of rock. That is why, student, we get different type of soil. Some soils are very soft in nature, some of them are very sandy in nature. So it totally depends upon their parent rock. That means the rock from which they have been converted into the soil. Okay.
Rock is not a chemical compound, but an agglomeration of minerals. Types of rocks. Rocks may vary in their physical properties, and this variation is due to the process that gives rise to rocks. Rocks may be classified into three categories on the basis of their origin. These are igneous, metameric, and sea industry. Igneous rocks. They are also called primary rocks because they are formed first. The word igneous is taken from the Latin word ignis, meaning fire. These rocks are formed by the process of solidification of molten rock material called magma. Igneous rocks are very hard. Most rocks found on Earth belong to this category. They are good building materials. Examples of such rocks are basalt, granite, and dolerite. They can be classified further into two subtypes: Extrusive igneous rocks. During the volcanic eruptions, when magma erupts and on reaching the Earth's surface, it cools and solidifies. As a result, rocks are formed on the surface known as volcanic rocks. Intrusive igneous rocks. They are formed by the solidification of magma below the surface of the Earth in the cracks or joints. Inside the Earth, magma cools very slowly and as a result forms crystals of large size. Sometimes the magma solidifies at a great depth. Due to very slow cooling, large size of rock crystals are formed very deep down. The deep-seated igneous rocks are called plutonic rocks.
So, student, do you listen like what she's telling us that what is about the igneous rock, that we are having the rocks on our earth, and it's just that we are having different type of rocks, and these are the three type like igneous, sedimentary, and the metamorphic. And the igneous rock which we are getting from the volcanic eruption. Okay, so it is they are very hard in nature and they are generally used up in the construction of the buildings. Okay, so that's a student, we are having two type of is extrusive and the intrusive, and it depends upon the like when the magma is reaching to the earth surface, and if it is getting solidified, so we call it as extrusive. But when you can see it is floating, so it's like the intrusive one. So that's how student, first is the igneous rock. Now we are going to study about the sedimentary rock.
Sedimentary rocks. They are also known as secondary rocks because they are formed from the sediments derived from the pre-existing rocks. Igneous rocks are exposed to the forces of nature. These forces break the rock on the surface of Earth into small pieces. These small pieces turn to tiny particles with time. These tiny particles are transported by agents of nature like rivers or winds and are deposited at certain places. The deposition of such materials occurs in layers. That is why they are called stratified or sedimentary rocks. These rocks often contain fossils of animal and plant life. They are comparatively soft. These are formed when remains of vegetation and animals were buried and trapped within layers of other sediments. With the passage of time, the trapped remains changed into coal or petroleum. This is why coal and petroleum are known as fossil fuels.
So, student, this is the sedimentary rock, and like igneous rock is the primary rock which we are getting like first like primary. Then from those igneous rock, that is why student, from the sediment of it, there is a formation of second type of rock that is called as the secondary rock, and the name of the secondary rock is the sedimentary rock. And this sedimentary rock, student, contain fossils of living organisms. That means it contains the dead and decaying part of the plants, animals, and you can say even the for the people as well. So they contain these fossils, and from that fossil, students, we get fossil fuels, that is like the coal and petroleum, and we use those fossil fuels in our daily life also for the different purposes. So first we are getting igneous rock, then we are getting sedimentary rock, and it's like that, student, igneous rock is very hard in nature, but sedimentary rock is soft in nature. Okay,
they help us to calculate the age of the rocks and tell us about things that happened millions of years ago. Sedimentary rocks can also be classified into three subtypes. Mechanically formed sedimentary rocks. When rocks are exposed to weather changes, they are broken and thus carried to a particular site where such material is deposited in layers and the rocks are formed. Examples of such rocks are clay, gravel, and sandstone. Chemically formed sedimentary rocks. They are formed by the process of evaporation of water containing mineral salt in solution. In deserts or shallow lakes, water evaporates, leaving behind a layer of salts. These salts get consolidated into sedimentary rocks. Examples of such rocks are common salt, gypsum, and potash. Organically formed sedimentary rocks. They are formed by the accumulation of the remnant parts of organisms, plants, and animals. Examples of such rocks are chalk, coal, and limestone. Metamorphic rocks.
So students, like the igneous rock is divided into two parts, extrusive and intrusive. So the sedimentary rock is also having three types, like it is chemically formed and organically formed, and we can say that is the mechanically formed. So it depends upon the condition, that what condition it is getting. Like in the organic one, what happened that when there is the accumulation of the dead and decaying part, so that we get the organically formed sedimentary rock. That means we have done with the two types of the rocks. Now we are going for the third type of rock, that is the metamorphic rocks. Okay.
Meaning of metamorphic is changed or altered. These rocks are either igneous or sedimentary rocks which have undergone a change due to excessive heat or pressure. This change of one type of rock to another is called metamorphic rocks. For example, due to excessive heat, limestone changes into marble and sandstone changes to quartzite. Metamorphic rocks are very hard. Rock cycle. The three categories.
So students, like we have studied about the three types of rocks which is in your syllabus. So what we have seen that we are having three type of the rock, students. That it's just that we are having igneous rock, then we are having sedimentary rock, then we are having metamorphic rocks. And from the weathering of these rocks, that you can say that the large piece of the rocks which are present over the land surface, and when they break down or crumble because of the action of the elements of weather such as rain and change in temperature, as we have seen that the metamorphic rocks are getting formed only from the igneous and the sedimentary. It's just that there is a change in the temperature and the pressure, so that it converts into the metamorphic rock. And these rocks are break down into the small pieces, which results into the soil because of the action of the you can say rain, temperature, wind, or that all are the elements of the weather. That is the weathering process, student. Okay. Now the last part of this session is soil erosion. That what is the soil erosion? So soil erosion means, student, when we are growing crops, so what we require a fertile layer so that the crops can grow very well. But when that fertile layer gets removed from the soil with you can say with the process of the wind, or you can say with the water, so we call it as the soil erosion. So the removal of the, you can see here, removal of the fertile topsoil lent by wind or water, we called it as the soil erosion. Soil erosion occur easily in those areas of land which are not covered by vegetation, trees and other plants, or have very little vegetation. What happens to students, that the trees and the plants which we are having, they have roots, okay, and these roots will hold the soil. But what happens, student, when we, like as we know this thing, that the deforestation is increasing day by day. So due to that deforestation, student, what happened, that the soils are not having any roots so that it can hold it. When we are not having trees and plants, so what happened, that the top layer of the soil get removed with the help of the wind or the water, which result into the soil erosion. And due to that, student, we don't have any fertile top layer. And that's how, student, when the soil erosion increases, so it will create problem in growing crops, because for the growing crops we require fertile layer. But when we are not having fertile layer, student, so it results into the problem. Fine. So it's like the deforestation is the very, you can say that the cause for the soil erosion, because plants and trees are not there, because the roots of the plants and trees hold the top layer of the soil which is fertile in nature. But when there is no such roots, so what will happen, that the layer of the soil is getting removed with the help of wind or the water, and which result into the soil erosion. And because of that, student, we can face many problems, like even though microorganisms are not getting proper life in the soil, okay, and it's just that the we like deforestation is the main problem of that. So how can we conserve this soil, like afforestation? That means you must grow more and more afforestation, more and more plants. Fine. So it's just that student, when we are growing more and more plants, more trees, so that roots of that plants and the trees will hold the soil, and that's how the problem of soil erosion can be conserved, because we require the very fertile top layer so that the good yield can be produced. But if the top layer is not there, or if the top layer we are having but it is not fertile in nature, so what's the use of it exactly? So we have to conserve the soil so that we can grow the crops very well. Now for the soil erosion, I'm having one video. So I'm just going to show you that video here.
Introduction. Wow, a greenery all around. I enjoy this in the village. But that land is vacant. Why is it so, Dad? Sahil, that land is no more fertile. But long before, different types of crops used to grow over there. Then how the land becomes infertile? Due to soil erosion, my son. Soil erosion? What is that, Dad? Children, soil erosion is one of the major environmental problems in today's world. Come along to know more about it in this lesson. Soil erosion and conservation. Objectives. At the end of this lesson, you'll be able to define soil erosion, list the factors responsible for soil erosion, explain the effects of soil erosion on environment, discuss the preventive measures for the control of soil erosion. It is everywhere. We walk on it, we drive on it, and we grow plants on it, and so on. Wondering what is it? It is soil. Soil is the uppermost layer of the Earth's surface.
As we have already discussed that what is the soil? Soil is the uppermost layer of the Earth's surface, on which, as you have seen, that we walk, we drive, we grow crops, so we do everything over the soil only. Fine.
It consists of a mixture of rock, finely ground into powder, water, air, minerals, and a variety of living and dead life forms. It serves as a natural medium for growth of plants. Most soils contain 4 basic components: water, air, mineral particles, and organic matter. But the fertility of soil has decreased significantly. This is mainly because of soil erosion. Come, let us learn about it. The natural removal of soil by the action of water or wind is called soil erosion. Look at the images. The disappearances of topmost surface and large ditches in the ground are the signs of soil erosion. Friends, come let us know the factors which causes soil erosion. The most common factors are water and wind movements. Water flowing through ground carries away soil with it. During rain, the soil particles are detached by raindrops. These soil particles are carried away by the running water. Floods are also the main cause behind the soil erosion. The other agent responsible for soil erosion is the wind. Wind picks up the finer soil particles and takes it to the other location.
So students, we have seen that what is the soil erosion. So soil erosion is it is a very important factor, or you can say that important cause, which is harming us in a negative way, because it is removing the top layer of the soil. When it is removing the top layer of the soil, then we call it as the soil erosion, and which is resulting into the very different factors, like we can't grow crops because it is not getting fertile at that point. And what are the factors which are responsible for the soil erosion? So it's just that water and the wind, as we have seen here, because when there is the flowing of the water over the soil surface, so what will happen, that along with that water, the soil particles will also get flow away from it, because students, that the water is flowing, so the soil particle is mixing with the water, and that's how they are removing from their place. And secondly, student, like wind, when the wind gets, we know this thing, that how wind blows, so along with it the particles are getting removed from its surface. Okay, so these two factors are there.
During storms, the heavy wind takes away the bigger soil particles to a distant place. and that causes soil erosion. Though soil erosion is in itself a naturally occurring process, but in many cases increased by human activities. Some of these include.
So students, like, yes, when there's water and wind, so we can't do anything because it is getting like it's a natural thing, so we can't do anything. Okay, but student, it's not like that only because of the natural process or because of the natural factors we are facing the problem of soil erosion, but it also because of us human beings also, because we do such activities, because of that student soil erosion is there. So what are those activities? So just look at here.
Deforestation, overgrazing by animals, improper or excess amount of farming practices, trail building.
See students, like you can see here, like deforestation, as I've told you that in the deforestation what happened, that we cut down the trees and plants. Okay, and the trees and plants helping the soil to hold that first layer of the or the top layer of the soil, which is fertile in nature. But what happens student, when the plants and trees are not there, so they are not having any like you can get, they are not having that hold from the side of the roots. That is why student, when the water or wind is getting flow like is there, so they are just getting removed along with them. So that's a student, that the top layer of the soil is getting removed. So that's the first condition. Overgrazing means student, like if we are having one field, and in that one field, like all of the day or at very regular basis, people taking their cows and buffaloes for the grazing, so it results into the overgrazing. And because of that student also, that the top layer of the soil get removed. Fine. Then third, it's like farming. When you do, like you are having one land and you are not giving that land much time so that they can overcome their, like, because what happens student, whenever we grow crops on one field, so what happened, that the all of the nutrients and the components which is present in the field, it is consumed by the roots of the plant so that the crops can grow well. Okay, but students, as we are not giving any time for the soil so that it can recover into the amount of nutrient and component, and we are just growing crop and crop, so it also results into the removal of the top layer. Okay, then like construction of buildings, it's an important thing. Overuse of chemical fertilizers, housing construction, mining, etc. Soil erosion leads to many unfavorable conditions. It results in the loss. So students, these all are the factors which is causing the soil erosion. It's like natural factors are there, but more than natural factor, as I can see, that human factors are more, because we know this thing that the top layer is getting removed, but we are not thinking about it. We are just constructing more and more building. We are doing development, like we are not looking about this thing that the top layer is getting removed, and because of that we can see many problems. So what problems you can face? So these are the effects of the soil erosion. Of soil and breakdown of the soil structure. It decreases the soil fertility due to decrease in the amount of organic matter. It also reduces the moisture content of soil, resulting in drought condition. Decrease in soil fertility leads to decrease in the quality and quantity of the crops. Thus, soil erosion affects the natural vegetation badly, which leads to transfer of fertile land into a desert. Due to soil erosion, the soil shifts and accumulates on the roads and streets. This blocks the driving and results in accidents. It also blocks many irrigation canals. It increases the risk of flooding. The eroded soil deposits in water resources like river, lake, etc. and pollute them. Soil erosion is a major environment. See students, like so many problems we can face because of that flood. And even though like the fertility of the soil is getting decreased, and if the fertility of the soil is getting decreased student, because of that, that the vegetation is facing problem, because we can't grow more crops over that. We can't get the good quality of the crop. So that's how student it is like we are going to face many problems because of that. Okay, so that's how we have seen that what is the soil erosion, what are the causes of the soil erosion, then what are the effects of the soil corrosion. Now we are going to see that what could be the preventions like we can take so that the soil erosion cannot be like you can see that cannot be there. Okay, so now what are the prevention students? Environmental problem. It has affected all over the world, from forests to deserts. Thus, it's the need of the hour to conserve the soil by preventing the soil erosion. There are many ways of preventing soil erosion.
One of the most common ways is to grow more and more trees. The roots of trees hold the soil firmly and do not allow it to wash away easily. Trees planted across the wind direction protect soil against the high-velocity winds. Controlling overgrazing of the land by animals also controls the soil erosion. Building dams control soil loss. Some modern techniques of farming need to be practiced. For example, different types of crops should be grown at different times on the same land. Different types of crops should be grown in the alternate rows in the same land. These practices control the loss of soil and increase the fertility of soil. Remember, friends, soil is a precious natural resource, and it is our duty to conserve it for keeping the environment healthy.
So students, we have seen that what preventions we can take, like as I've already told you, that afforestation, because the roots of the plants and trees hold the soil firmly, and because of that they are not moving from their places, with like whether the water is there or wind is there, so the plants or trees protecting it. Even though you can do one thing, that you can stop overgrazing. Like I know this thing that the plants, animals require the grazing for their survival as well, but it's like that if you feeling that the land is facing the problem, so you can shift them to the next, like to the another land, or you can provide them fodder or any other thing so that they can survive. Okay, so by taking all such and you can say that student that by taking all such steps you can prevent the cause of the soil erosion, which is not good for us, because soil is a very important resource, or we can say very precious resource, which is given us to as a gift of the god, we can say, because we are getting it naturally. As we have discussed, like if you know this thing, that what are the natural resources, that the resources which we are getting from the nature only. Okay, so when we are getting the soil from the nature, so it results as a natural resource, which is a very precious thing for us, because if the top layer of the soil is getting you can say infertile, or if it is getting removed from its place, so it result into a bad vegetation or the bad yielding of the crops, and which is not good for us. So that's our student, we just stop all these technique, or all these steps which is causing the soil erosion, and start practicing more steps so that we can prevent soil erosion, like by planting more and more trees, more and more plants. And think about this, like if anything we are doing, and if it is not causing soil erosion, so it is good for us, but if it is resulting in the soil erosion, so we should stop that particular step at that point only. Okay, so this is the soil erosion, and we have already seen what are the causes, what are the effects of soil erosion, and how can we prevent soil erosion. Fine, student. Now we are having one question here. Explain how soil is formed. So, soil is formed due to the weathering of rocks. That means breakdown of the rocks with the help of the elements of the weather. So, weathering is a process in which physical breakdown and chemical decomposition of minerals takes place by wind, water, and climatic changes. In the weathering process, rocks are converted to small pieces, which eventually turn to soil particles to form a soil of layer of soil. So, that's how student, from the weathering of rocks, like we are having large piece of rock, and when the particles, or we can say when the elements of the weather helping for the breakdown of the rocks into the small pieces, and those pieces eventually turning into the soil particles, which form the layer of soil. And on basis of that, we have seen one the soil profile, that how many, like in at the very you can say at the very you can say lower basis, there is the only bedrock, and that's how they are getting weathered. We are getting partly weathered rock, then we are having soil part which contains small size of rock, then we are having very soft texture of rock, that is the topsoil. So that's a student, weathering of rock is important so that we get the soil, and this weathering is done by the chemical decomposition and the physical breakdown of the rocks with the help of the elements of the weather, such as wind, water, and climatic changes. So that's how we are getting rock, we are getting soil from the weathering of rocks. Okay, so now students, we have completed all of the topics which we have to cover up in this session, and with that student, now it's your duty to study well and to watch the session carefully, because it's an important session. It contains so much of information about the soil, which is a precious very, very precious natural resource for us. So that's how, student, you have to study well, you have to watch the video carefully. And if after watching the video, if you are having any doubt, any question, so you can post your question on the public or private forum of Ask IITians, and you will be getting your answer from expert side. And with that, student, we are going to end up today's session, and then we left with some of the part which we are going to discuss in the next session. Okay, so at the very last, thank you so much for watching video, and keep learning from Ask IITians. Thank you.